Good afternoon, everybody. Hello, y'all. We are talking to you from Kindred Place today, our first in a series of question and answer gatherings for people to give some voice to their concerns, questions, worries regarding our children going back to school in this most bizarre and peculiar era of COVID.
Mm-hmm.
So my name is Catherine Collins. I'm the clinical director here at Kindred Place. We are an organization that is geared toward all issues related to families and children. We have services geared toward all of those age groups and do therapy classes, and we'll be opening up even more avenues for parents to have resources and get some of their questions answered. But for today, we have a number of questions that we've already gotten from parents regarding helping their children make the transition back into regular school after a year that's been stressful for all of us. We're going to have two more series in the next upcoming Thursdays where we'll be answering your questions and talking about some of the issues that are on the minds of parents and children. So for today, we're just going to start with questions that we have already come in, and please feel free to submit more of your thoughts or questions as we go on. But Alexandria and I will be talking with you all today about these issues. So I'll let Alexandria introduce herself as well.
Hi, everyone. My name is Alexandria Morris, and I am a family services therapist here at the Kindred Place. And I guess, in addition to what you've already said, Catherine, is that we also offer parenting classes as well. And so we do urge you all to put some of your questions, add to the conversation in our comment section, so that we can answer these questions for you. So I guess we can start. Oh, I'm sorry. We also have a survey that we have out right now, and you can actually access that through our social media pages and different things like that. We will also try to link that in the comment section for you so that you can have quick access to that as well.
So we've had a number of questions already submitted, and Alexandria and I were talking just ourselves earlier this morning, getting ready for our conversations with y'all this afternoon. In addition to our clinical work here at Kindred Place, you probably should also know that Alexandria has three little children of her own, and a lot of these issues, topics, and questions have in her heart immediacy for her.
Yes.
I also have kids, but they're grown, and no age group is immune from the stresses that have come this year. But some of the questions that we've gotten from parents regarding the shift from what we hoped would be a return to much more normalcy than we had experienced at this time in months gone by, and finding now that it's not quite so normal as we may have hoped.
Yes.
We've gotten questions from parents who are concerned about helping their children through this transition. So one of the questions that we had gotten was, what do you feel is the most different or challenging issue about returning to the school this year? And there are some aspects of that are just so obvious because, as Alexandria and I were discussing earlier, never before have our children had to deal with the kind of topics and questions and awareness of risks that they have now.
Mm-hmm.
When you think about the most significant challenges returning to school, what are some of the ones that you would put at the top of that list?
So I think for me, because my children are still very small, the fear of, I guess, leaving them in a new place in general. So that you have a little anxiety about that. But then making sure that while they're in school, that they're keeping their mask on, that they're washing their hands, and they're not putting things in their mouths and different things like that. And I think even as the children get older, that's still a concern to make sure that they're keeping their mask on and different things like that. So it's a lot. This year of going back to school has provided a lot of different challenges, and also I guess what we talked about earlier, the social anxiety that also comes with returning
but never has it been to be trusting that the adults who are taking care of your child will attend to the needs of safety, like masking. You know, that can raise parental worry to a whole new level. And I think whatever we think of the stresses related to families dealing with the unique pressures of the here and now, there's the parent anxieties and then there are the child anxieties.
Yes.
And we were talking earlier that children who last year, many of them were studying remotely for the entire year long. Last year, we were impressing upon our children that we were not going to restaurants, we were not leaving the home as much, we
Yeah.
were conscious of who we were involved with. So our poor little people were, of course, absorbing some of the risks that we were feeling because we had to educate them toward their own safety. So now here we are, all these months later, and children who have had limited social contact,
Interaction, yeah.
who have felt their parents' inhibitions about going out and
Yes.
entering the world again,
They've created their own
they have their own little
anxiety,
worries.
yeah. And I think that that's really important because as parents, we exhibit or we demonstrate for our children how to respond and how to act in certain situations. And sometimes, like you identified that, when we're anxious, our children see that, and it creates an anxiousness for them. And so I think we have to be mindful of that because we can help them to present themselves in a certain way based off of our responses and our interactions with them.
So probably we could talk for the whole next half hour about the anxieties that everybody that we are all trying to deal with. I guess the question is, so how do we help our children through this time? And to some extent, that answer is consistent with how parents help their children through most kinds of stress, transition, and anxiety. We want to have a calm and predictable routine within our
Yes.
family. And that's always more important when children are returning to school. Have we prepared them for what they need to take with them? Have we prepared them for how school may be different this year than it
Yes.
was
Right.
in previous years? Have we talked with them, as you say, about what some of our concerns are?
Mhm.
Because if you speak to your child in an age-appropriate way, it's better to communicate with them what you're thinking and what
Yes.
your concerns are rather than just leaving it unspoken.
Yes.
Kids will fill in their own worries in
Yep.
a vacuum. What are some of the ways that we can help them cope if they have some worries at school?
Mhm.
Kids always have their social concerns. Who are they going to have lunch with? Who
Yes.
will their friends be? How are they going to get along?
And it starts pretty early.
It starts pretty early.
It starts pretty early. I was just talking to my oldest daughter about that the other day and the questions that she has about, social interaction, so it starts really early.
And she's been missing several months worth of practice because
Yes.
where she should have been doing that in her preschool, she
Mhm.
spent a lot of time at home just with mom and dad and siblings. I think one thing that's just helpful to remember as a parent, as a member of a family, there will always be challenges.
Mhm.
Your children will always come home with questions or worries or insecurities.
Yes.
As soon as you figure out one, they'll present you with
Another
new
one.
ones.
Yes, that's true.
And although the age of COVID certainly is a new animal that none of us really have had practice with before, I think one thing that's important to remember that as parents, when our children present with worries and anxieties, what we want to be able to offer to them is a calm,
In safe space.
nurturing, safe,
Yes.
protective environment. I don't know if you've noticed this. I always thought it was just so striking. Your child may come home with who knows what kind of worries or sadnesses, or my teacher was rough on me, or my friends
Mhm.
didn't play with me. And in their turmoil, just the very process of telling you what's troubling them and you being able to hold that worry for them, automatically
Releases
their
them of
anxiety
that.
goes down.
Yeah. Like I said, I just actually had an experience like that with my oldest daughter the other day, and it was just for her to be able to come to me and share that experience with her, and for me to take the time out of whatever it is I was doing to validate, her concerns and different things meant a lot because I can see even in her interactions that she was able to, move past that situation.
Exactly.
And so, yeah.
I think that's just such a testament to the power of a loving parent
Yeah.
relationship. She can hand some of that anxiety to you.
Mhm.
You can't necessarily make it all go away for her, but you'll hold it, and then she can go
Yes.
about the rest of her day.
And to know that she has that support
Mhm.
as well, I think is really important. And so I think you brought up another great point about consistency and predictability.
Mhm.
When your children know that that you provide that for them, it makes it a lot easier. I know we're talking about the transition in school and different things. We talked about it a little earlier how even in my own child I saw some regression a little
Right.
bit as
Right.
it relates to dealing with this pandemic because our children, especially when they're young, they don't really know how to vocalize what's going on. And so you making sure as parents that we're picking up on different cues so that we know that what's going
Mhm.
on with them. And even when they're older, different personality changes, different behavioral changes, making sure that we're picking up on those things so that we can address those things with our children as well.
Interpret the meaning of behaviors.
Yes.
Right. That what you see may
It's
be
not-
more than
yeah.
just the behavior itself.
Mm-hmm.
So then I guess the next question comes, if as a parent, your goal is to provide that non-anxious, reassuring presence,
Mm-hmm.
even in the knowledge that we may not be able to fix what the
Yeah.
child's worry is, but we can let them know that we're in this together and we're gonna be
Yes.
okay, then where do the parents go?
Yes, and I think you actually, so we're kind of flowing into the questions because there was actually another question was, have you noticed changes in your kids' behaviors and habits that can appear in trouble sleeping? Are your children, and smaller children, are they potty trained, but now are they kind of, wetting the bed a little bit? Different things to pick up on. So yeah, I think we're kind of just flowing straight into it. That's really good.
Yeah, I think everyone needs to get some kind of, I don't know, child psychology degree should come along with parenting little kids. But in addition to parents getting resources to understand some of the meanings behind their children's behavior and how to address those behaviors, where do parents go for their own
Yeah.
reassurance, opportunity to express and deal with their own fears? And I guess that's part of what we're hoping to provide here,
Yeah.
for people to have conversation with one another of what they're observing, what they're concerned about, what seems to work, what questions we might have.
Mm-hmm.
Because in order to take care of little people, it's essential that
Yeah,
the
okay.
big people have resources to make sure that we're okay
Yeah.
too.
Most definitely.
So feel free to throw in some questions into the mix here to add to what we have already gotten from folks. Do we have anything? We'll just refer back to what we already have.
Okay, so
Which ones look good?
okay, I think this one. What coping skills, if any, have you noticed that your children use? Or which coping skills have you discussed with them? I think that's important too
That's a
because,
really important one.
how are you responding to these difficult situations? Because I just think it's important because we're going to deal with difficult times. In this time right now, we're just trying to accept and adjust, but how do I do that?
That's interesting because sometimes what we see in our kids, like Alexandria was just talking about some regressions or some behavioral changes or some sleep impairments,
Mm-hmm.
those are how our children are coping.
Yeah.
And do we understand some of these behaviors as their efforts to get through stressful times for them? And can we help them have more effective
Yes.
coping
Coping skills.
Because I'll tell you, I don't know how many middle school age kids, one of the ways they cope with diminished peer activity, diminished
Mhm.
structure in their schedule, isolation, confusion. One of the ways that those kids often will cope in those years is through video games or
Yes.
TV or screen time.
Mhm.
And I think parents, I've heard this from so many parents, have to be careful how they address that.
Yes.
Because one inclination might be, you're on your tablet too much, we're going to have to cut back.
Yes.
And then it's also important to realize that may be the only way that child has peer activity is to
And-
be
yes,
testing their
because
skills.
now they have the games where they can actually interact with other people. You're not in the home, actually physically there doing it together, but they are able to have conversation with other people, and so I think that is a really important thing as parents. How do we address this concern with our children?
It's a different context now than it was a year ago.
Okay.
Oh,
Well, I think that's a great question.
Oh,
So we
that is
just had a question come in, and it's, I'm not comfortable, or my child is not comfortable with wearing a mask. How do we address that? And yes, having the mask can be a very difficult thing. As I've seen, some people, we connect not being able to hear, with the mask, because we have to see people's mouths moving when they're talking and different things like that. And it is difficult. This is a difficult time that we're in. What are your thoughts about that, Catherine?
so, the same as anything, when it comes to explaining things to children, you have to pay attention or consider what is the age and the developmental level of the child.
Yes.
And I think, for little children, there are kids, well, your little one has to wear, 2-3-year-old children wear masks to preschool or to their day school environment. For those little ones, really whatever it takes to help them get comfortable with a new experience,
Yes.
which is practice. I know a lot of moms have had practice times at home. Let's all of us wear masks at home and get used to what it feels like. With some little ones who have no concept of what's going on and why, referring to
Yeah.
superheroes.
Yes.
Let's get you a Batman mask.
Yeah.
I know
Making it fun.
lots
Yeah.
of children's stores now, and although this is in so many ways a sadness, but our stores have masks that are geared toward children to
Yeah.
make it something that's more positive and less onerous. As kids get older, then they're going to want more of an understanding,
Yeah.
and we want to be able to explain to them about safety, taking care of themselves, taking care of each other,
Yes.
but in a way that won't scare them.
Yes.
And then as children get even older and conceptually can understand more, I think then there's an opportunity to explain our commitment to wearing masks in terms of empathy.
Yes.
In
I think
terms
that
of-
is a really good one.
We take care of each other, we live in community, that we care not just about ourselves, but how we affect other people.
I think that is great. I think that is really great. So the mask, like you said, the face masks that are for smaller children, wearing these masks that have characters that they like, can really make it a fun thing. But also if they see that you're able to accept
That's it.
it,
The
that
modeling.
model it, that it's okay because my mom is doing it, my dad is doing that.
And also, we need to let them know that this is not forever. We're in a time now that we're dealing with, and things will go on forever. So now we have a question: how can I gauge whether my child is having a tough time with the transition? Questions I should ask as a parent and signs I should look for. Really good question.
Yes.
Because, and actually, that's a question that has relevance even independent of COVID. When do we know
Yes.
that our children are getting overtaxed?
Yep.
Because growing up is not an easy process.
It's not. And going through these different life transitions, and then, obviously now to top it off, that we're implementing COVID in
A big one.
in our day-to-day experiences. So, yeah.
And that just takes some intentionality. Nobody said that raising small people was an
Don't get a
easy
handbook.
process.
Yep.
And again, depending on the age, I think you always have to pay attention to developmentally where your child is. So Alexandria's little girl, who was 3 or 4,
Yeah, she was 3.
so
The start
regressions
of
in
this,
potty
yep.
training, that's often an indicator that something has been disruptive.
Yep.
Now, in terms of gauging how serious that is, you and her dad paid attention to it, kind of helped her get back on a schedule, and she was fine. But you also were aware that she had been disrupted, that
Yeah.
there was a disturbance in her force. She wasn't
Yep.
seeing her friends anymore. With older kids, you can see sleep impairment,
Yeah.
appetite impairment, irritability. That's a big one.
Irritability is a great big one. I think even other behaviors, noticing what their personality is.
Yeah.
And if it's anything outside of their
Out of
personality,
character.
yeah, that's not normal for your child, I think that's a big sign that something is going on. Not what I think about all of this is that it helps foster a really great communication and sets the tone for a really great relationship to exist when you have these conversations with your children about what is going on. So even talking about the mask, being able to talk to your children fosters really great communication, which leads to a really great working relationship.
That's right. It really is just money in the bank if you develop the ability to find those moments
Yes.
where something's up with your kid and you're going to try and make some connection. Sometimes where kids will really make it challenging is with what you see that's out of character is that they're crabby.
Okay.
That you're seeing some defiance
Yeah.
or sort of moodiness.
Defensive.
Yeah.
Very defensive.
And especially now, I think as parents to take a breath, and before we respond with correcting the behavior,
Understand.
is to check out what's
Yeah.
going on.
What's
This
going
is
on.
not like you.
Yeah. And so I think we got another question, and it was what is normal, or in terms of behavior, and I think that goes back to recognizing your child, what's out of
normal
the
for your
norm
child.
for their personality or who they are. And I mean, if you have if your child is pretty quiet anyway, then you do have to do a little bit more work. I think, because if your child is already a little quiet, you have to do a little bit more work. But if your child is a child that's been talkative, and now they've become withdrawn or isolated, I think that's really important to pay attention to,
Mhm.
because something significant has changed in their interaction and in their personality.
I think what Alexandria said is probably the most important thing. No one knows your child as well as you do as the parent.
Yeah.
So anything that strikes you as out of the ordinary or problematic or upsetting, I don't think you ever go wrong. I don't think you can check in with your child
Enough.
too much.
I agree. I
So,
agree.
so if, and obviously this, we're talking about kids who are old enough to put their thoughts into words.
Mhm.
But even I had a parent tell me the other day that their 8-year-old just seemed quiet and sad and wasn't smiling and was easily upset. And the parent just took him on her lap and said, you just don't seem yourself. Are you okay?
Yeah.
And just that very act of snuggling with
Yeah.
Mama for a minute and having Mama check in on her was enough to help over that bump and open the door
Yes.
to what might have been on her mind.
Support. Yes.
Oh,
So,
gotcha, we're wrapping up
yes,
already.
we're wrapping up. It went by
Good
pretty
talking.
fast. It went by really pretty fast, but we really enjoyed you all coming today. We wanted to remind you all about the survey that is on all of our social media platforms, and we will be here next Thursday, same day,
Same time?
same
Send in
time.
questions?
Yes. And so please feel free to send your questions in the comments. Thank you so much. We've enjoyed you.
Thank you. Bye.